What's up, guys? Michael Fave, Olympia Fitness and Performance. On the topic of things that we do to assess whether or not we consider somebody to be high risk for an ACL injury, depending on what equipment you have at your disposal, I'm just going to go over some examples of drills that we like to do in here. There's plenty of different ways to assess whether somebody's at risk for an ACL injury. Different college programs are going to have their own protocols, but for quick, easy tips, I'm just going to go over a few, and one of them I'm going to talk about is the box jump. So the box jump is used for a number of reasons. We can train explosiveness, vertical, power, all that good stuff, but for this particular video, I'm only using it as a recipe for assessing whether or not somebody's at risk for an ACL injury. So I always tell the athlete, if we're doing this on day one, let's pretend Brandon here is a young athlete. Brandon's one of our trainers, so his form is actually naturally good at this, but I'm just gonna kind of showcase what some common things we see that we consider faulty movement mechanics. So I'll always tell the young athlete, I don't care how high you jump when we're doing it this way, and I just wanna see how you jump and how you land. We'll get into the landing in a second, but I'm just gonna talk about, I just wanna see him jump for now. So I'll tell the young athlete, just get nice and close to the box and let me see you just naturally jump. Okay, so you notice Brandon does a good job of sitting back on his heels and using his glutes and hamstrings. Very uncommon among young athletes without any strength training experience. What we tend to see is a lot of rolling on the toes, I say, or we call it. Yep, so that is actually extremely common. That is one of the most noticeable things that we see on day one. So a risk factor for ACL injuries is being quad dominant, people not really knowing how to use their glutes or hamstrings, and rolling on the toes is a good indicator of that. And yeah, it's just not very knee friendly. That tells me that they've spent their whole life jumping this way, and you go to put them in a fast-paced competitive environment, that could be a red flag. Another thing, I'll have you go on this angle so you can see, is collapsing of the knees. We call this valgus collapse. So a lot of times our young athletes, I'll tell them to jump, and what you'll see is those knees buckle in, exactly before they jump. And that could be a good indicator of weak glutes, mainly the glute med, or especially with young female athletes, we tend to see that in. Young female athletes are around 4 to 6 times more likely to tear their ACL. So that is also a red flag, and that tells me we have a lot of corrective exercises to work on going forward. So those are the two common ones. There's also plenty of others. There's also excessive trunk lean. So not really jumping in that good athletic posture. You might see that rolling of the toes causing their upper body to roll excessively forward. That's also something we look for, just an overall body control standpoint. And then now I'll get into the landing side of things. So we always tell our athletes when we go over what we want to see out of perfect form wise is you want to land in an athletic position, heel first. So I'll have Brandon kind of demonstrate the first way he did it, which was solid. Didn't really make a sound. The impact was very well absorbed through his hips, his hamstrings and glutes, but that's pretty uncommon. We don't usually see that with these preteen and teen adolescent young athletes whose bodies are still developing. Common things that we do see is, especially in females, they don't tend to sink their hips very well when they land. They might land in that really upright posture, whereas it's not much of a hips back absorption. It's more of an upright, quad dominant based landing. So this is kind of what we commonly see. I'll just have Brandon show that. You can hear that too. That's a lot of impact that we don't want. We want more of a soft, quiet landing. And on that same token, we also see that collapsing of the knees on the landing. So I'll have you come back around here. So we might see it on the force production phase, but on the absorption phase, if that inward collapse is happening, it tells us that we also need some work to do. We have some work to do on landing mechanics. Lastly, same kind of idea with the excessive trunk lean. I'm always looking at the upper body too. I'm not just staring at what the knees are doing, so to speak, because everything's connected. So we might see kind of a faulty upper body posture, right? You see his center of gravity is so far in front of him, I mean, he's not really decelerating well. Also, the last point I'll get to is like a staggered stance. You know, he might favor one side of his one foot. He might be on his toes too much. He might land, one foot lands first, the other foot lands right after. So these are all things I'm looking for. I hope you found that helpful. This is just a quick, effective, easy way to assess if someone's at risk for an ACL using a box drum.